of this summer school, I welcome you. I welcome Dr. Narinder Kulkarni, sir. This call is now being recorded. And dear participants, before we start the session, I want to introduce you about our today's resource person, Dr. Narinder Kulkarni, who is presently working as Principal Scientist, Agriculture Entomology in ICR, Indian Grassland and Fodder Research Institute, Southern Regional Research Station, Dharwad. Sir has worked on different projects, especially in integrated pest management on different crops, including especially this maize, sorghum in Dharwad region. And sir has published more than 70 publications in internationally reputed journals, which have been very much cited throughout the globe. And sir is a recipient of different awards from different societies, and has been part of different technologies by developed by the station. Sir has been also part of different varietal development programs for different crops regarding pest resistance and other aspects. Sir, Kulkarni sir, Kulkarni
Ah,
sir has been very
oh,
Kulkarni has been very much active in outreach programs also in that region. Sir, before you are going to talk about sustainable pest management in agroforestry ecosystems. Dear
okay.
participants, very important lecture, and I hope this session will be much more interactive, because I think this is the only topic in this summer school regarding pest management. So, participants, I request you to interact with sir how we can manage sustainably these pests in our agroforestry ecosystems, because sometimes we have observed that these pests are one of the major problems in our systems. And yeah, there are the management aspect in agroforestry and sole crops is somewhere different, because yeah, because some barriers created by different agroforestry components. So we have to discuss all those things in this lecture. And I request all the participants to be very active in discussion with Dr. Narendra Kulkarni sir. And I request Dr. Kulkarni sir to start the session, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Siraj,
Thanks, sir.
for nice introduction. So, good afternoon to all the participants. Today we will be discussing on the topic sustainable pest management in agroforestry ecosystems. So, this is a very broad and uh, general topic. So, here pest management in broader sense we will be referring to the insect pest management. So, so before entering into the sustainable pest management, so we often hear the term the sustainable development. So, what is sustainable development? Sustainable development is a development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to their own needs. So, this is in very broad sense we use the term sustainable development. So, integrated pest management or IPM, it is very, very popular term. Everyone must have heard. But of late, even people use the terms like sustainable pest management. So, these are the dimensions of development of sustainable development goals. So, whenever we talk sustainable world or integrated or whatever it may be, we always talking in terms of three components. Uh, they are social, they are environmental, and they are economical. So when we say this sustainable development is more than just caring about the environment or generating money through economic growth, and we are also talking on environment mainly in terms of climate change and global warming, deforestation, or loss of biodiversity. So when we say sustainable development, it includes all the three pillars. So these are the three pillars of sustainable development. It is a society, it is economy, and it is environment. Integrated pest management, we use the term called sustainable pest management. Like IPM, so we parallelly use the term SPM. SPM is an holistic and whole system approach applicable to agricultural and other managed and rural communities that builds on the concept of integrated pest management. It includes the wider context of the three sustainability pillars. Just now I told three sustainability pillars: society, economy, and environment. So when we use the term SPM, it must contain the three pillars. So you are already aware of what is the agroforestry and what are the definitions and what are different methods of agroforestry. You are very well aware of that. We are not going to those details again here. Straight away coming to the topic of sustainable pest management or integrated pest management. So what are the general benefits of this agroforestry in terms of SPM or IPM? If you look at the picture, so it shields livestock and carbon from wind and extreme weathers, and they are helpful in increasing the crop yield, and it provides habitat for pollinators. So this is very important point of view from the point of IPM or SPM is concerned. So because agroforestry system, because of its conservation agricultural system, it provides habitat for the pollinators. So in turn, these pollinators helps in obtaining the better crop yields and agroforestry systems, and they encourage the parasites and predator populations compared to monoculture. So here, this agroforestry system, it creates microclimate environment, and apart from slowing the runoff of soil erosion or whatever it may be, and then again, it helps in both water quality as well as building the soil health. So because of this sequesters of the carbon and improved soil health, so automatically, so the general crop stand is better. So when the crops are healthier, so they can able to withstand the uh, insect pest problems. So in this agroforestry system, as you are seeing in this picture, apart from soil fertility or control in soil erosion, so here the another aspect is the pest control also. So when I say, because the combination of different crops with your perennial or woody plants, so due to the rich ecosystem, so it harbors plenty of parasitoids and predators. So it is the provides, apart from provisioning food and materials, it also helps in the social impacts of rural livelihood. So when you improve the microclimate, such as lowering of soil temperature or in reducing the evaporation of soil moisture through combination of mulching and shading, what you are looking at this picture, it indirectly helps in the better crop stand compared to the sole crop, and such ecosystem definitely helps for better pest and disease management system. And even if you look at this incremental soil nutrients through the addition of decomposition of the litter form, this is one simple pictorial representation, both above ground litter as well as even below decomposition and mineralization by taking deep soil nutrient uptake on mineral weathering, biological symbiosis, and even littering through the leaves. So this agroforestry system, especially this in the ecosystem of agroforestry, we will find much better soil nutrient status compared to even sole crops. So on overall, this system going to help for a better stand of the crop, and in turn they fight against these pest and diseases. How this improvement of soil structures, so even through the constant addition of organic from decomposed litter, it also indirectly benefit the overall productivity of the system, and by improving microorganisms of soil biota to the humus and mineralization, and thereby providing nutrients to microorganisms and soil biota, or even by decomposition of this crop residues. So overall, the microclimate of this agroforestry system compared to even plain lands or even monoculture, this is definitely going to help the crop stand and overall productivity and yield from soil structures. So it also helps for the conserving pollinators, parasites, predators, and even soil microbial beneficial organisms, and even the promoting the growth of endophytes also. So indirectly, they are also responsible for reducing pest and diseases in agroforestry system. And even reduction in the incidence of total crop failure, which is very common in single cropping or monoculture system. You have heard these types of frequent crop failures in monoculture. So that's why it is always repeatedly told that to avoid monocropping or monoculture. And because of this concept only now, this IFS, integrated farming system, or multiple cropping system, these systems have come into the effect only to avoid the loss of single crop. So there are chances of pest and diseases destroying the crop is more in case of monoculture compared to the integrated farming system or multiple cropping system or in agroforestry system. So this reduction in incidence of total crop failure incidents are also less. So when we have this monoculture, so if you look at the natural light condition, water losses, leaching and drought condition or high evapotranspiration, all these factors, and even yield loss due to the insect pest and diseases, they are much higher in case of monoculture. So when we are taking monoculture or repeating the same crop on a same piece of land over years and years, so there are a chance of high buildup of pests and diseases in a locality compared to the cropping system where crop rotation is involved, where mixed cropping is there, where integrated farming system is there. Just to take the example of even agroforestry, so here, so the higher biodiversity and habitat for the beneficial living organisms, so thereby enhancing the beneficial insect activity, and it helps in reducing the pest and diseases. This is one just example, just from the point of view of pest and diseases. There are several other benefits, and even agriculture production systems differ in the extent of stress towards cultivated crops. Agroforestry, they are considered to provide a protective function against the environmental stress. So this is one solid example of encouraging agroforestry systems to tackle even pest and diseases. When we use the term IPM or integrated pest management, so there are mainly, before going to the management, even forget about the control, control comes at the end. So even before the we use the term management, so there are two phases here. One is the prevention and next is the detection. So there are several agronomic practices, thereby you can prevent the pest and disease incidents, such as crop rotation, resistant varieties, undersowing, intercropping, protection and enhancement of the beneficiaries. So in case of detection, so detection is nothing but the decision support system where we are monitoring and forecasting and warning systems. And next phase is the management or control. Before going for the management, so first we try with mechanical management, physical management and natural control. And then we'll go with the biological control and at the end, the chemical control. So before taking up any pesticides measures for the control of pests and diseases, we have to pass through all these systems. So not necessarily whenever there is an insect pest or disease occurs in the field, we suddenly start spraying insecticides or fungicides or whatever it may be. That should not be the case. So we should try to manage any insect and pest with non-chemical methods, just by simply crop rotating or by using resistant variety or by manipulating dates of sowing or by changing the seed rates. So these are all the phenomenons. We can call it as a mechanical control. We try to adopt these before taking actual plant protection measures. Even by using some physical methods like traps, devices, sticky traps, pheromone traps, or even mechanical barriers, by using those tools also, we can able to manage pest and diseases. So biological control by using three P's. So whether parasites, predators, and pathogens. By combining of all the three, so we can able to manage pest and diseases. But there are some certain situations, not necessarily we can able to manage these pest and diseases. Sometimes situations may go out of hand, sometimes pest and disease may outbreak, or sometimes absence of natural enemies or so many other factors. So then we have to take the chemical control. So even in while taking chemical control also, again we should think of pesticides which are having green level before going into the last stage of red level chemicals which are having long persistence. So these are the simple components of the IPM, and I repeatedly told again in IPM also three pillars to be taken into care. The first is economic viability. Whatever we suggest a farmer, it should be economically viable. So if it is IPM, if it is very expensive, then who will going to uh, listen to our technology, or who is going to borrow this technology? So whenever you say that you should use these small tools for the pest management, they should be economically viable. And then is environmentally safety, and they should be safe to environment also, because we should not recommend very highly uh, poisonous, toxic, or carcinogenic chemicals for the management of pests and diseases. So whatever components we use in IPM, they must be environmentally safe also. Then social acceptability. So whatever measures we recommend, they should be accepted by the farmers as well as society also. So here again in IPN we have different components, like it requires planning and knowledge and resources. So whenever before entering into the IPM, it requires knowledge about the pest and knowledge about the available options of management and information about what are the tools and technology we are going to use. Then comes to planning and organization. Before going to IPM, we should have a very strong monitoring system, whether it is agroforestry system or other any integrated pest management. Then we should have managing information, and then we should be very clear about what are our actions. So then in case of communication, we should always, even whatever, whoever use this IPM techniques, they should be staying informed within the group and among the growers with the public. So there should be some communication regarding the aspect. In pest management also, we should go in a phase wise, like by using resistant plant varieties, then we should go for some cultural management, then we should use biological, behavioral, physical or mechanical, microbial, then the last stage will be the chemical. So this is a simple pictorial diagram showing the conservation and convention agriculture. Conservation is, for example, your own agroforestry system, and whereas conventional is taking the monocrop or sole crop. If you look at this picture, so whenever we introduce any agroforestry systems or bordering, taking your forestry trees or shrubs, so definitely there is less soil erosion and lower evaporation and better water use efficiency, and they indirectly the higher habitat complexity and better plant quality and better microclimate, and you can see the abundant natural enemies exist in such ecosystem compared to the sole crop, because here it is a higher soil exposure, higher evaporation, lower water management, and ultimately even it leads to more amount of pesticide applications compared to the conservative agriculture or even in agroforestry system. So when we talk about this agroforestry system, especially from the point of view of pest management, so here mainly we focus on this cultural methods. So growing variety of crops together in the same location, increasing the habitat for pest and predators, and limiting the number of food plants for specific insect pests, and discouraging the monoculture. Okay. So these are the methods we follow during the cultural control. If you see at the insect pest of agroforestry system, they are essentially pests of the components of both crops as well as woody perennials. So the dynamic of insect pest and natural enemies are governed by complexity and composition of the agroforestry system. And here, pest situation in these systems will be influenced by the degree of interaction between the components, the type of agroforestry system and composition of the plant communities or the each component. When interactions among components of the agroforestry system can be either positive or negative or neutral. So whenever we talk of this agroforestry system, whenever you introduce crops in the agroforest system, sometimes, most of the times interactions may be positive, sometimes there may be negative or even neutral. So many factors governs this insect pest intensity in agroforestry system, and each factor may have different effects on pests at different times under different situations. So the net outcome will be sum of favorable and unfavorable effects of pests and their natural enemies. So here trees and sustainable, here trees are susceptible to insect damage just like crop, even in agroforestry system. Although the extent of damage depends, but they are also vulnerable or susceptible like crops. They are attacked by either leaf eaters at the nursery, termites and root grubs during the early establishment of the stage in the field, and even defoliators, sap suckers, gall formers, stem borers, and even pod and fruit borers, seed eaters, perpetually during the later stages. So Satyavir and Verma, they reported the long list of insect pests on 17 leguminous tree species widely used in the dryland agroforestry system in India. So when large number of herbivores feed on agroforestry trees, for example, Susbania suspen, which is widely being tested as a short duration planted fallows in soil fertility improvement, it is attacked by more than 30 species of the insect pest. So this is one example. So a compilation of even insect pests observed feeding on 20 agroforestry trees. In case of Africa, as reported by Singh and Rathore in 1995, they indicate that some of the species, such as even eucalyptus or pigeon pea, they harbor as many as 160 insect pest species in different parts of the tropics. So a review of insect pests of fodder trees and fodder tree legumes given by Walter and Perry in 1994, they emphasize the potential danger from a large number of insects to both indigenous as well as exotic tree species. So again, a team of scientists from ICRAF, it is International Center for Research in Agroforestry, and CABI, Center of Applied Bioscience International. So they have a long debate on potential of these pest problems in agroforestry. And finally, they have formulated on visiting fellowship was established by ICRAF in 1991 to collaborate and synthesize the available information on the insect pests in agroforestry. Since then, the number of papers on pest problems in agroforestry were published. So there are examples: Day and co-workers in 96, Dix and co in 95 and 96, and Mikova and Nugi in 94, Mukhtar and his co-workers in 96, Singh and Parihar in 97. Here are some examples where even publication related to pest problems of agroforestry. So they started appearing. So because very limited information and very scattered information is available on the pest status in agroforestry system compared to the monocrops. So when you take the monocrop or sole crops, so there is abundant information available on pest and diseases. But if you take care of this agroforestry. So very scattered or very limited information is available on the insect pest as well as their management. So the magnitude of pest problems in agroforestry is determined whether the herbivore interacts with the individual component of the system, two or more components of the system, and components across the system. So here herbivore interactions with multiple species over different spatial and temporal scales have implication on the pest management strategies. The species specific pests have to be through the either through host plant resistance or biological control strategic uses, chemicals depending upon the economic importance of the damage. Here, if you look at the agroforestry system, they can be broadly categorized into 4 groups. So depending on the nature and extent of the either tree crop interaction having implication on the pest problems. So what are those 4 categories? So one is the blocks of sole trees grown for either fodder or for firewood or for pulpwood. Then simultaneous systems. So you are all very well aware of these systems. Just in brief, I am mentioning simultaneous system in which trees and crops are grown together in the same field. Sequenced system in which trees and crops are rotated over time in the same field. And biomass transfer system in which tree foliage produced in one field is used as a green manuring crop in the other field. So here some factors you should look at. What are the factors contributing to the insect pest problems in the agroforestry? So there are factors at tree species level. For example, exotic species. So when we have these exotic species, they may succumb to the local pest in their new environment or introduce pest from their original home, just as exotic pest accidentally introduced may pose major threat to the both indigenous as well as exotic trees. So here there are many examples in these type of system and insect host interactions that caused severe economic losses in case of exotic species. So we have intensive use of species also. So when many agroforestry trees are experience fewer pest and disease compared to annual crops, probably because of their less susceptible to the pest. So as I mentioned earlier, so compared to the annual crops or monocrops, so here agroforestry system, so probably there is a less incidence of insect pests and limited domestication, less intensive culture, and extensive balance between insect herbivore as their natural. The inherent tolerance of tree species to pest may be eroded in the cause of its genetic improvement. So whenever, if you take even monocrops or sole crops, when these crops, when we keep on start breeding for the genetic improvement or for a higher yield or whatever it may be, so their resistance starts eroding. So that's why that is the main reason where or most of the even cultivars, monocrops or annual crops with hybrids, they are very susceptible to the pest and disease compared to the wild plants or even grasses or trees. Here pest problems may also increase if the species is grown intensively within the system. So when we start growing intensively on large area using irrigation, fertilizer, pesticides, then it is going to affect the breakdown of this host herbivore and natural enemy balance. So thereby you see the higher incidence of pest disease. If you look at this table, it is an example of interactions of both exotic and indigenous trees and insects. So there are types of origin of insect, then origin of tree species. Then if you look at long-term consequence of interaction of insect and tree, then you can hear the example. When the insect is indigenous and tree species is also indigenous, here the chances of minor pest may become epidemic. The severe depollution of Sesbania sespan by Mesopotamic beetles due to increased use of Sesbania is an example. When the insect is indigenous, then tree is exotic. Here increased host range and food availability Then Celosternus cravator, a minor pest of Acacia species, attacked eucalyptus over time in India. Both exotic, insect as well as tree, then new pests may get established. The psyllid havoc on Lucania in Asia was reported. When the insect is exotic and tree is indigenous, then local tree species susceptible to the new insect pest. So the Lucania psyllid adapted to Semenia saman in Southeast Asia. So these are the examples. So here again, the tree soil crop interactions also, they have an effect on pest. A number of tree species used in agroforestry are known to inhibit the crop growth underneath. Okay, we call it as an allopathic effect due to the root exudates. Okay, and latter may experience greater pest problems. When you see the allopathic effect, so even it may affect the overall growth of the crop. And they may also chances of attack by number of insect pests. Not all the tree crop interaction lead to increased pest. There are fewer pest problems. Many cases we can have fewer pest classes, and they shelter the other unfavorable environment condition and improves the growth by the efficient nutrient cycle. The microclimate plays very important role. Microclimate changes caused by trees in a mixed system by increased humidity or reduced air and soil temperature or even decreased wind speed. These changes may bring about positive or negative impact on the activity of insect pest and their natural enemies. The activity of shade-loving insects is usually increased under the trees. Some dung beetles were reported to prefer staying under the shade. Then lower temperature and higher humidity under trees in warmer regions may reduce the desiccation of the soft-bodied larvae and sap-sucking insects and increase their activity. So you can see here in the even different type of examples. Sometimes it is favorable for the insects, and many of the times it is detrimental for the insects. And even host range of insects also. So when you see the host range of insects, plant species belong to the same or close taxonomic groups. In any agroforestry system, they are likely to share common pests because similar morphological features or presence of same closely allied biochemicals. Whereas in case of oligophagous insects, the feeding on plants of certain biochemicals makeup may adapt easily to closely related species having similar biochemical constitution. For example, the damage caused by pod borer in peas was accentuated by the presence of the acacia trees in the vicinity. Many polyphagous insects do feed on taxonomically diverse plant species also. Example, white flies. So they are also vectors of diseases. So they thrive well on very diverse plant species and with no even apparent taxonomic alliance. So here insects with wide host range, they rapidly multiply and cause the greater damage if many are other hosts present in the system nearby the landscape. You can see all different types of interactions. So here sometimes even masking host plant odors also. So many insects are attracted to their host through the perception of odor emitted by them. A possible consequence here is the interaction agroforestry that odors released by some plants may mask the effect of odor released by others. So making it difficult for insect to locate its the host plant. So even insect, they are unable to find their host plant, and thus this odoriferous species in combination with normal host, so they hinder insect ability to host recognition or feeding or reproduction, and thereby, so you can see the very less insect pest incidence in agroforestry system because of this odors. And here we can have even barrier effect also. Very simply, trees may act as a mechanical barrier for the dispersal of insect. As a nurse trees, they protect crops from pest attacks to have biological role in repelling insect pests because of this unfavorable morphological features. Example, even hairy leaves. Example is the mahogany planted between the rows of Igna edulis from less and delayed attacks of the lepidoptera and shoot worm. And even spatial arrangement of the species also. Here the configuration of the system as determined by species composition and their canopy color, structure, height of the plant density and spatial arrangement and the exposed soil background, and they affect some insect recognizing their host also. Such insects are easily confused by the change in the system configuration. Here, Dempster and Popper in 1974 observed that even small changes in cropping practices greatly alter the attractiveness of the plots to pest and the nature. And here, even sequential system also going to affect this agroforestry. Then we have this biomass transfer system and at landscape level last. Foliar biomass of trees and shrubs used in green manure, they also increase the activity of the soil fauna. Not only they suppress weeds, and it also help in enhancing the microbial activity and thereby helps even reduce the pest incidence. Even in agriculture landscape, trees and shrubs occurs from a different spatial and temporal arrangement, which crops and outside forms the communal land. So the mosaic system at any type of landscape, it allows the frequent transmigration of insect pests and their natural enemies. So if you look at the table, like this one is the insect pest management in agroforestry. So the management variables and their possible range of effects. So where management variables, we have a species diversity, number, row orientation, tree density, all these are management variables, and it's going to affect whether high pest incidence or low pest incidence. Okay, in species diversity. So low diversity with closely related species, and in case of low pest incidence, it may be high diversity with the widely different species. So this is a self-explanatory. And coming to this IPM, so whenever we are using the term IPM or SPM, sustainable pest management or integrated pest management, so in agroforestry, take into the account of some of the following strategies. Okay. Substituting susceptible tree species with alternate species that provide similar products or services. And second, strengthening up the species tolerance to resistance insect pests, creating conditions that reduce population of insect pests but favor natural enemies. Then strategically using environmentally safe chemicals and botanical pesticide, and finally exploiting biological control through the introduction of natural elements. So what are the strategies of pest management in case of agroforestry? Choice of the species, as I mentioned, we introduce selective diversity of agroforestry system. The plants chosen should be taxonomically far apart and have a narrow pest complex. This is the first criteria. And second one is the microclimate. So if you are talking about the microclimate, so definitely this microclimate going to help for build-up of even beneficial microorganisms and even including parasite or predators, and definitely for the reduced insect pest and disease. And field configuration and design also very, very important. So arrangement of crops and woody perennials in agroforest system, they affect the activity of insect pest and natural enemies. So by planting trees in line with the direction of sun path, the shading effect can be minimized. So while planting perpendicularly to the sun's rays, that will give the maximum shade. The introduction of even barriers also, because large trees sometimes they act as barriers to the movement of wind insects in the field. So the non-host plants may also act as a barrier, and there may be planted in broad stem or along with the host plants. So even odoriferous plants, as I mentioned, and trap plants. So here trap plants, in case of plum plants, the main crop or woody plant may be protected from attack by insect pests by growing more palatable plant. Okay, so that is called as a trap plant. Such trap plants may or may not be component of the system, but definitely they serve to divert the pest. from the main crop. Then we should also have this management practices. So whenever we think of managing practices, management of an agroforest system need to be developed or modified with a minimizing insect pest incidence and injury. So depending on the habits of the major insect pests in the system, even agronomic practices may also should be tailored to discourage pests and to favor predators as well as parasites. So these are the topics are broadly mentioned under this integrated pest management or sustainable pest management in the agroforestry ecosystem. As I mentioned in the beginning, if you take up this whole crop or monocrop, so you can get numerous research information related to the integrated pest management or different use of chemicals or different methods in managing pest management. But if you look at this agroforestry system, the information is very, very limited and scattered. So because of this reason only, so there are some directions for the future research of this agroforestry, especially from the point of view of integrated pest management or sustainable pest management. So these are certain points which are recommended for the point of view of sustainable pest management in agroforestry. First of all, identification of insect pests in agroforestry system would be the first step. So because when we take up sole crop in combination with agroforestry system, whether it's a woody perennial or taking with any forestry plant, so the composition again changes because sometimes when the sole crop, when it is grown with agroforestry system, so because of this symbiotic effect, because of enhanced microclimate, better crop health or better habitat manipulation, definitely even pest management or insect pest incidences may be lesser in conservative agriculture or in agroforest system compared to the sole crop. So therefore, again identifying the insect pest. So when we take up the agroforest system, so that is the first step in understanding what are the insect pests they are occurring in this agroforest system and whether they are really causing any economic crossing economic threshold level and causing the damage. And the second step is they must be identified. So whatever key species of pest complex is there, they must be identified for the further details because this identification of insect pest is the first step to understand their even natural enemies also, and for better understanding of the biology and management. So to identify the insect. And second is the estimation of loss caused by the insect pest, either as a, if possible, on the individual plant species basis or as a system as a whole. Sometimes insect pests they can able to cause damage on both woody perennial as well as forest plant or as well even crop also. So we should look into the as a whole system approach. So again, information about agroforestry insect pests may be presented in the form of identification manual or containing some figures or photographs of these pests for the information of how they cause injury and what is their distribution, how host range, life cycle, natural enemies. This information definitely going to help, especially those who are working on pest management system, especially in the agroforestry. So again, agroforestry system have a great potential for the establishment of the biocontrol agents. As I mentioned, if you look at sole crop or mainland agriculture or even landscape agriculture, so here the conserving natural is very, very difficult because high value crops, especially even vegetables, also fruits, also, or even some commercial crops, farmers are frequently using these pesticides. So whenever they are taking up the frequent use of pesticide sprays, so there are very less chances of establishing the very strong biological system control agent systems. So at least certain point of view in case of agroforestry, the conserving biological control agent is possible and it has a great potential compared to the mainland agriculture or even in sole crops. The pollinators of the insect pollinated plants in agroforest system need to be identified. This is one area where, because when you have the combination of forestry, forest trees as well as in crops, so they harbor plenty of pollinators, and even there is a need to identify these pollinators in the agroforestry system. And another important area of research is the effect of interactions among different components on insect dynamics is very, very important, because in conservative agriculture, the behavior of insect pests is different uh, in comparison with this conventional. Woody plant species, okay, the even being considered for agroforestry must be studied for insect associated with its natural habitat, especially if it is intended to introduce in the new areas. So whenever you are introducing in the new areas, so what are the insect pest associated needs to be studied. Then tree improvement program, it should include insect resistance. So unlike our varietal program in annual crops, even in tree breeding also, there must be a component on insect resistance as one of the objectives. And there is a need to study various tree crop combinations of different agroforest systems for their insect reduction capabilities. And the effect of both temporal as well as spatial arrangement of crops as well as woody perennials on the agroforest, on the insect pest in agroforest system needs to be studied. Then plant species considered for agroforestry should be studied for their allelopathic characters and their ability to repel or attract the major insect pest species in the system. So here inclusion of such species that repel the pests of other component species should be encouraged. And then plant species that act as a collateral or refugee host also need to be identified, and developing very effective pest management program in agroforestry. Agronomic as well as cultural practices, they help in reducing this major pest population. They need to identify such practices and to be developed. IPM strategies must be devised. An ideal pest management program for agroforestry should be with minimized use of pesticides, and but maintain the pest population below the threshold level. This should be the objective, and by encouraging or integrating even physical, cultural, or biological methods. So the relevant information on insect pests and their natural enemies should be stored in a database system, and it should be made available. So this is in brief about agroforestry system. As you are already aware of the different types of agroforest system and what are the components. Again, these types and components, they vary across the region. So because each geological zone has got a different agroforestry system, and everywhere you find the different types of insect pests and diseases. So this is a very broad guidelines of how this IPM or sustainable pest management to be incorporated in this agroforestry system. So there are certain recommendations also from the point of view of how agroforestry system, especially from the point of view of integrated pest management or sustainable pest management. So what are the target areas needs to be tackled? It was mentioned just now as a, some future requirement or future line of work from point of view of agroforestry pest management system. So in brief, so we can conclude. So the field of agroforestry entomology is, it is virtually unexplored. So very minimal, very scattered information available on this system, and there are very vast possibilities for research in the field in particular. So there is not much information is available about insect pests, as I told, compared to the main crops. and effect of co-cultivation of crops and trees and insect dynamics, especially even tritropic interactions also, uh, host plant, insect, and then natural enemies. So these things needs to be studied in agroforestry system. And finally, the list of aspects that could be studied long, beginning with the collection of information about the insect pest of different agroforest system and many factors that are significant in complex relationship between plant and insect in every agroforest system should be studied. So this is in conclusion. So with this, we are coming to conclude this topic as per the uh, time allotted. So I have tried my level best to include so the different components and giving examples and some points of mentioning. So what are the some future research or future line of work suggested for this IPM or SPM in agroforestry system? So with this, I will conclude my presentation and organizers for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, Anand.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. We are really thankful to you, sir, for this very excellent and informative presentation.